Welcome to the Fit Dad Club podcast. You're here with Travis Jones and Jason Barrett. How you doing today, Jace?
Doing well, despite the lack of sleep over the last few weeks, but I will persevere and I will push through because dealing with ups and downs and handling your emotions is what we're talking about today. So, got to be an example.
100%, mate. I think today we're going to talk about emotional stamina, which is without being the foo-foo, be able to control your emotions, during the day to stay on track with your choices to become the best version of you at the end of the day. That's what emotional stamina is, to be able to endure life's ups and downs without breaking and faltering to a lesser version of us. I think for all of us, we can use the tools that we learn today and also the perspective and mindset shifts that we're going to learn today, not only with our health, but also our relationships and our work, because at the end of the day, being able to control and master our emotions is something that if you want to be successful in any aspect of your life is crucial. And, it's a little bit of emotional intelligence as well to be able to have emotional stamina, because you have to be aware of your emotions, or self-aware of your emotions, and also self-aware of your triggers that impact those emotions to be able to control them. I'm sure that everyone out there, I know I have in the past, definitely I always reflect back to versions of me. There was a version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. And I know that I think I'm probably at like 53.0 at the moment. But when we look at it, there was version 1.0 version of me. And that was before I understood how different situations and different triggers impacted my emotions. And then I would also always default to a more aggressive nature as well. Or frustrated nature. So I would then, because of the trigger, I would then choose a negative emotion, which then actually always cause a negative outcome. So as I developed as a human being and patience with having kids, I started to understand what were my triggers. Also, what is the best route after this trigger happens, so I can make sure I can still stay on track and be that best version of me at the end of the day. And that's all we want to be, is we are the sum of our choices, and we want to make sure that we can make the most, healthy and optimized choices on the daily basis to get to the best version of us and self-actualize at some point in our life. So today, that's what it's all about, guys. Hopefully, if you're listening in the car, take some clips on your podcast. If you're listening and you're on YouTube, or if you're listening at just sitting at home, get a notepad out and start writing down some of these notes. But I think just to open it up to start with, I want you to have a quick chat about basically what emotional stamina is. And it's not just talking just about emotional stamina today, but emotional stamina at the end of the day is you know what you're trying to achieve in a day. If we look at the health and fitness perspective, you have to have a protocol, right, to achieve a goal. So your protocol could be steps, could be training, and could be nutrition, hitting a certain amount of calories and protein, right? So you have these three protocols you're trying to hit on a daily basis. Now, the day could even just start bad, just get out the wrong side of the bed. Or something could, as Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Something metaphorically punches you in the face. I'm not, someone might not be metaphorical, someone might actually punch you in the face. But at that point, you deal with it, right? You had a plan to hit your protocols, and then something came out of the blue and it just shifted, the course corrected you for the day in towards being the lesser version of you. So I want you to look what do you currently do in that situation? I want you to reflect. And I was like, well, do you then start making lesser choices? Do you get frustrated? Do you, reach for a beer? Do you not go to train? Do you have the burger? Do you look for food for comfort? What are you currently doing to comfort yourself when things that you thought you were certain you had control over became out of control, and you don't know how to flip the switch back on track to get back in control? And a lot of us obviously do lean to alcohol and food to comfort our emotions at this time. But I think for us, it's one, you have to understand, what do I currently do? Okay. And do you currently just flip the switch? Something happens out of control, just keep on, trucking on and you hit your protocol. If that's you, hey, awesome. Great work. If you currently default to a lesser version of you, I want you to go, well, okay, well, my emotional stamina is a little bit small at the moment. because I'm allowing the emotions dictate my choices based on external events. And for us, what we need to do is we need to understand on the days you feel bad or the days where things don't go right, we need to even be more committed to our protocol. That's like the days you don't want to do it are the days you're even more committed to doing it. And that is emotional stamina in a nutshell, because you have the ability to, in flux, still control your emotions and stay focused on the task at hand to be the best version of you. You are the most committed when you least feel like it. The worse you feel, the more focused you become. So I think this is the first question is like, one, do you have a protocol? Because if you don't have a protocol to achieving your results, well, you need to have a protocol. Otherwise, you don't know if you're going off track or on track because you have no track. You're literally just floating in the ocean. So we need to have a protocol for step one. Yeah, exactly. Just floating around there. Yeah. And two, you need to know when things happen outside your control at the moment, what is your current default? Okay. And is that taking you away from the best version of you or towards? And if it's taking you away, you need to go, well, why am I choosing these choices? And what's a better way to go? And that will still allow me to stay on track. And how can I deal with this? And I think that's the crux of what we want to look at today, mate. Anything you'd like to share?
I think it's remembering we usually do have a bank of essentially emotional resilience for a day, and the better practice you get at letting go of shit, the bigger that bank becomes, and the more attention you've got to allocate to other things, right? And it becomes easier to let go of stuff the better practice you get at it. But when something bad happens, someone cuts you off in traffic, and then you dwell on it and you dwell on it, and you just keep getting more and more pissed off about it, and you think, oh fuck, if I pulled him over, I'd say, oh, where'd you learn how to drive? The shit driver academy, or like, you play, you're having a shower and you're rethinking the arguments you're having in your head and all that kind of stuff. Like, the more you hold on to that stuff, the more it just kind of chips away and eats away at your resilience until you're left with very little at the end of the day. And as we all know with kids, you can't have such little emotional resilience left at the end of the day, because there's going to be shit that happens, right? And my wife and I obviously recently, having a 5-month-old now, every now and then all the time, there's shit that happens that's out of our control. She might, like, as we're about to go to sleep, she might just start screaming and wake up, or just like want to start playing, and we'll just look at each other and be like, well, here's what it is. All right, well, we're playing now. She got up at like 5 o'clock this morning, and she's had like 4 or 5 wake ups in the night, and we're like, well, you want to go for a walk? But then she managed to fall back asleep. So I got up and did some work, and she, went back to sleep. And then it was all good. But you deal with the punches that come. But if there are a lot of punches in a day, you've got to be really good at letting go of shit. And I think that comes back to, as you were saying before, perspective and realizing, well, what actually matters in life? What actually matters to me? Does this little thing that's happened actually matter? And for me, the problem comes for most people with the disconnect between what actually happened and what you're feeling and what's really going on. Because it's not just that, this small thing happened. It's that it's a buildup of, your wife made a comment to you this morning, or your whatever. And then as a result, you're stewing on that, but you weren't really thinking that you were stewing on that. And then, you went to McDonald's and then they were out of the ice cream. They're always out of ice cream. They're like, oh, the coffee machine's not working, so you can't get your coffee. And then you're like, oh fuck, this stuff is like all building up. And as Trav said, it's like a pressure release valve on a pressure cooker. If you can't let that pressure out in certain ways, whether it's just doing some nice forceful deep breaths. We've talked about this in the mindset podcast as well, talked about meditation and box breathing and all these other things. If you don't have something to help you let go of those annoyances, which is really what they are, right, then you're going to let them eat away at you over time. And then by the end of the day, you're going to have no bandwidth left for your kids, for your training, for your goals, because it's been focused on these these trivial things. But it's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? It just adds up over time. So don't underestimate the power of being able to let go of the little things, because the better you get at letting go of the little things, the better you'll get at dealing and letting go of the big things as well.
Yeah, I think to be honest, what you were explaining there, it's like playing life on defense, right? You're constantly playing defense, and if you're only ever defending, you're never scoring goals, right? Because you're constantly in this reactive state, and you're trying to defend yourself to get through the day, rather than, we don't want to just get through the day. We want to win the day. We want to crush it. We want to move forward on a daily basis. I think that's one of the biggest things we have to understand. It's like, there's two things we can only ever control inside life. And I think, so many of us try and control things that we have no power of controlling. And I think this is the biggest issue. I want to control, the way Jace responds to the way I talk to him. I can't control the way Jace responds. I want to control the way my wife wants to, respond to me. I want to control the fact that when other people say they're going to do things, that they actually follow through with it. But at the end of the day, we can't control anyone. We can't control the way that they, actually follow through what they say they're going to do. But also when we speak to them, we can't control the way how they're going to respond or take what we're going to be saying to them, how they're going to actually, take that in. So all we can control is our attitude and really our focus, right? Effort and attitude, or, essentially, focus goes, energy flows. So we start focusing on the little crappy things and we start having crappy energy, but effort and attitude are the two biggest things. So the effort we put into a task and the attitude we bring to a task. So I think if we can just go, well, that means I can't control anything but me. And that's exactly correct. Okay. Mm-hmm. That is exactly correct. That's the point. You can't control anything but you. And the longer and harder you try to control these outside external events, the more frustrated, the more stressful and resentful you'll become in the world. And then the less emotional stamina you'll have to actually focus on you, because you're constantly focused on everyone and anything else. Like, people are going to say things about you, whether you're good or great. People are going to respond to you in good or great ways. People are going to do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. Only thing you have to do is worry about what you're doing, and is that best for you and your family? Okay. And that's it at the end of the day. Is this the best version of me? And normally the best version of me acts in accordance to the best version of my family and the values that we live within. So I think it's going into an internal locus of control, which that's called, versus an external locus of control. So you're just looking at focusing on you and your internal environment, and understanding that we need to have algorithms at play inside our day that's to control our life. So when I say this, it's like algorithms, inside everything, there's algorithms. Inside a computer, there's algorithm does certain things, but same as our life. If there's an algorithm that we play, or a set of rituals or routines, let's call it an algorithm, that in the morning, this is the algorithm that sets me up for the best possible morning. You wake up, you grab your coffee, maybe you brush your teeth, or you have your water, you put your shoes on, you go to the gym. Like, that's the algorithm. You press play on the morning routine algorithm for optimal success. Okay. And then you have the algorithm when you go to work. I'm going to click on my, morning startup routine at work, and maybe you focus on what's the most important tasks. Then you go into emails, then you go into meetings, whatever your algorithm for work. You might have a lunch algorithm, so making sure you're staying on track with your food. You have a wind down routine algorithm. It's 4:45. Click that algorithm. This is how I disconnect from my day. You have an algorithm when you leave, and make sure you're getting home and being the best version of you. So and then you have a nighttime routine or a nighttime algorithm. This is how I wind down to get to sleep. Now, these routines or algorithms that we look at, we put these in place, and we insert them in to make sure that we're optimizing our energy, we're optimizing our health, and also optimizing our mindset at the end of the day. But we need to have an algorithm in place for when we get punched in the face. When something happens outside of my control, what do I do? Because sometimes people just sit in the corner and they sit in the corner and they complain. Okay. Well, that doesn't fix it. Okay. That doesn't also help you move forward. Some people get really angry at it and frustrated. Well, that doesn't also fix it or solve the problem. Some people get sad, and we're choosing these disempowering emotions, when instead we could choose something that still allows us to move forward to be the best version of us. Because normally something comes in on the external, we lower our frequency or our state, okay, that we're operating in. So we start to feel down, or we go into the lesser version of us. Then we start to tell ourselves these stories that aren't the best anyway. It's like, oh, Janice is always a bit of an asshole. And then we start to get angry, and we start, you're never going to get ahead in this, workplace, or, something happens and you had the muffin or whatever it happened. It's like, I can never stick to a diet. And we talked about our following through with our word the other day. But I think for us, it's going, well, my frequency dipped. because of this external situation or external circumstance, I need to have an algorithm at that point that I can input into my life, which flips the switch and allows me to turn back up to the higher frequency version of me. And you need to understand what is that algorithm to you. And we did talk about, I think earlier with mindset, there was music, there was going for a walk, there was literally doing like 10 burpees or 20 burpees that would definitely change your state. There can be box breathing, as Jay said before. It's like, but I need to go, well, this is my algorithm. As soon as this happens, bang, insert chip, algorithm is played. And then you shift out of disempowered state, which makes disempowered thoughts, which then leads to the lesser version of you choices, okay, to change state, better story. Just like me, when something comes outside my control, I upregulate, okay, and I become even stronger because obstacles make me stronger. And it's like having that mindset shift and you just get straight back on track. And I think understanding, it's like, if you can just think, okay, I need to deploy an algorithm right now to get me back on track and have a high frequency, then great, let's do it. And it's just understanding the triggers that do push you off track. I think that's a big thing as well.
Yeah, if you have, as Trav said, if you have that game plan, that algorithm that's ready to go, that you can enact anywhere, that you can use at any point in time when something comes up to get you back into a better state. And one of the things, I think Tony Robbins shares this a lot, but it's never a question of resources, and it's always a question of resourcefulness. It's never a question of, I need more resources. I need more stuff. I need to have more, more tools to be able to deal with it. It's never a question of that. It's just, how resourceful are you willing to be? How resourceful are you in that moment to get yourself out of that state? And the first thing you have to do is you have to want to be out of that state. Sometimes people will be pissed off because they're happy to be pissed off and they enjoy being pissed off and angry about things all the time. And the reason why, how deep do you want to go? There could be plenty of reasons why you're wanting to be angry all the time. Because if you're angry, then you don't have to be sad. Because if you're sad, then you're weak and you're not a man and blah, 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 blah. Like there's plenty of, go on some therapy here, but there's definitely some sort of deep wells of stuff, and this could potentially just like a presenting problem for a lot of people. The way that they're showing up and they respond, they'll react way too harshly to a relatively small issue. It's like, hang on, that's not really what's going on here. It's like, oh, my dad didn't love me. Fuck. All right, there we go. That's there's a lot of stuff coming up. But if you have an algorithm, or at least a way, and then the second thing is the willingness. You've got to be willing to let go of that stuff and let go of everything that goes with that. And for some people, they only have certain vices. They only have certain or things that they enjoy, that they do to unwind. But because they're doing them and using them just to deal with shit and just to deal with problems and curveballs that are being thrown their way, they never actually get the experience of enjoying them. One of the things I would say that I used to use as a bit of an escape, slash just like when I was pissed off or annoyed, just to deal with things, just to honestly just get my mind out of whatever's going on, was gaming, right? Online gaming was it's a big one for me. I'd say was a big one for me because, you don't get, that's not something that you do when you've got a wife and a baby and you're trying to change the world and make all the dads fit, right? You don't have time to be typing away on a keyboard at people. But that was something that definitely, when I was doing it more so as an escape from what was going on and to get away from the shit. And when I was doing that, I wasn't actually enjoying it. So it's just kind of a neutral experience. And even though it was something that I enjoy doing, and I, it's like a leisure activity, because I was doing it in a way where I was just dealing with the shit, it stopped having the leisure effect. It stopped being something that I enjoy. But I kept telling myself, oh yeah, it's just a hobby. It's something I enjoy. No, you're using it in the wrong way. So you can have certain algorithms that will sort of get you out of it. And for some people, that might be food. For some people, that might be alcohol. For some people, it might be training or the gym or whatever. But you can also use things in a negative way, and it can kind of suck the fun out of them. If you have to be angry or pissed off to want to go to the gym, or if you have to, have had a bad day for you to actually stick to your diet or whatever it is, it's like if you use things in the wrong way, and if you, I guess, abuse your the things that you enjoy, like, oh, I'm going to go, go for a walk with my kids whenever I'm stressed out. But then it's like every time you're stressed, you then think about going for a walk with your kids, and then maybe you take that stressed energy on that walk, and maybe it doesn't end up being as relaxing for you anymore because you're only ever doing that as a release, as opposed to doing it for the enjoyment of it. So there's obviously a lot that we can go into. And as Trav was saying, take some notes and consider for yourself, what are some things that you can do, right, without needing to rely on other people, without needing to rely on external things, to get yourself back into a better mind frame, to, as he's saying, be that upgraded, that better version of yourself. It's like, we've talked about this before. How would the best version of myself show up here? And there might be a level of vulnerability that's needed with your partner to be like, hey, some of the things you were saying to me, I really wasn't feeling them, and really, it got me feeling down. And as a result, it ended up being like, I ended up with all of this like mental stuff that was going on for me as a result, and it made work really bad. And it's like, when you said that to me, this is how I felt, right? And it's not about blame, and it's not about making excuses. It's just about being honest and open with the people around you as well. If they're saying things, if they're getting under your skin consistently, then being honest with them, and especially if you're in a loving partnership, ideally they'd be like, oh, holy crap, I didn't realize that what I was saying was having that effect on you. And then you can, using that method, also reduce the amount of I guess, negative stimulus coming towards you by changing some of the stuff that's coming at you, rather than just dealing with it and bearing it and trying to get back on track. When it becomes too much, you've got to have that conversation, and not in an explosive, why do you always fucking do this way, but in a way where you can have a conversation, say, hey, look, when you're saying this, it makes me feel like this, this is how I'm feeling about it, or I really appreciate it if you didn't bring this up like that, or we had a better conversation about it. And then that's a whole nother podcast topic, is communication and partnership and that kind of stuff. But that's just one of many methods to reduce the amount of negative input, essentially, that's coming in, so that you don't have to grin and bear it. You don't have to get back on track. You don't have to use the algorithm, because there's nothing for you to necessarily reset from. So learn how to handle the negatives, but also learn how to eliminate more negatives, so you don't actually have that many things coming at you that you have to deal with and change.
Oh, mate, I completely agree with you there. I think sometimes it's looking at also, like, before you even get frustrated, stressed, disempowered, low frequency, whatever it is, it's like, what do you do on a daily basis that makes you feel on fire, like you're on, like switched on, all in? And it's like, sometimes it's going, well, when we start to slip, we start to let go of the things that make us feel on fire, and then we just forget that we were doing them. So I think sometimes it's going, well, I've slipped for a couple of days now. Like, what am I not doing right now that's different? And you might be like, oh, I didn't do this in the morning. And normally it's like, it can be, working out increases your endorphins, all the rest of it. It could be having your morning coffee. It could be having a cold shower. It could be going for a walk with your missus. And now it started raining because you're going into winter, and you just missed that one little part, which is your morning walk. And because you're not doing your morning walk, it's now started to impact your emotional state throughout the day. And you didn't even know what it was, but it was that morning walk. It's like, okay, well, how can I manufacture that? How can I look at, I'm missing this right now, and that really put me at peace, okay, essentially, when we look at it, with my emotions on a daily basis, which allowed my day to flow really well. What can I input there to make sure I have that same sort of flow and same sort of feeling? So have a think also. It's not always like, what do you do when you're off? It's like, what do you do when you're on? And sometimes it's just making sure that we're constantly doing those things. I think I was talking to one of my clients last night, one of the boys last night. He's like, oh, I'm slipping into some old ways. And he's lost like 20, 25 kilos with us over the last year. And he's feeling great, strong, but he's slipped into a couple of bad habits. One of he's got 2 young boys, and he's got also a baby. And the baby's, I think it's like 4 or 5 months old, similar to you, Jace. And he was like, the boys get sick and the baby's not sleeping properly, so I'm tired, so I'm not getting up. I was like, dude, you have 2 young boys and a baby. You are always going to be tired. Okay. It's like this is your life at the moment. You're going to have a baby that has a sleep schedule. You have 2 young boys who still wake up during the night. So yeah, I would say 6 days out of 7, when you try and wake up at 4:30, because that's when he has to train in his daily constraints, it has to be pretty early for him. He's a principal of a large school, so he has a lot of constraints inside his day. So I'm like, man, like you're always going to be tired. But that if you wake up at 4:30 versus 5:15, do you think that you woke up not tired at 5:15 versus 4:30? It's like, no, I'll still be tired. I was like, exactly. But you're going to be a good tired if you woke up early and got your training session in, because you did something that was positive for you. and positive for the direction of your life and as a role model for your kids. And I was saying to him, it's like, you need to just like write a bit of a, not an I am statement, but a bit of a statement, because you wake up in the morning, your alarm goes off. You need to read this, like write it to yourself when you're feeling good right now, and write it to the version of you who will be reading this tomorrow morning. Okay. The person who then defaults into the lesser version of you. And like, he read it this morning. I gave him a text this morning because I was up and he's, a couple of hours before me in another state. And I texted him, so be the best version of you this morning, to make sure he got to the gym. And he wrote to me like what his statement was, and about, I am a role model for my kids, and, I do what I say I'm going to do. And I follow through all these little things. And he read it this morning, and it made it easy. It's like, I'm this version of me, even when I am tired, which essentially decreases my frequency and decreases my ability to make the right decisions, because we're emotionally vulnerable when we're tired all the time, and when we have a lack of sleep, where our emotional stamina, our bandwidth is decreased. Okay. It is what it is. But it's understanding that I am going to be tired, but I'm going to choose the best version of tired, not the less than best version. Because the less than best version is like, you just didn't train, you slept in, then you half scrolled on your phone for the next half hour because you can't be asked getting out of bed. Then you finally get out of bed and it's too late to go to the gym now, and you got a full on day, you work, and then you get home at night, you're trying to help with the kids at home and feed things. You're just like, you're so mentally spent and physically spent at the end of the day that you didn't train, right? Or you can be like the better version of you tired, where it's like, I'm still tired, but I trained and I did something for me. Okay. And it's not selfish to do something for you. It's selfless, right? It is, because if you train, then you have more energy. If you have more energy, you can be better version of you for your kids and your wife. You're working on yourself. And I think sometimes we feel selfish when we're looking to train, because we're feeling like it's time away from the family, when in reality, it gives us the time with our family to be better quality time. And I think that is a big thing as well. It's not about just spending the amount of time with someone. It's not the quantity, it's the quality, and making sure that you have abundance of energy. You're present, not thinking about other things. You're not resentful because you look at yourself and you feel like absolute crap, but like, you love and cherish the time you spend with your loved ones, because you're fully present, full of energy, and you cherish those moments rather than just sitting on the couch and watching some Netflix show thinking this is great quality time, when in reality, we both know it's not. So a couple of little interesting points like that I wanted to sort of recommend from the conversations I have with my guys.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's such a big one that, like, especially when you have to get up early and you're making that trade-off, but you've never felt like an extra half an hour has never really made a difference. Oftentimes it makes you feel fucking worse, right? If you like, I take whenever our little girl wakes us up, I'm like, that's when I'm up. Like if it's 5 o'clock, like this morning, it was like 5:20. She woke up. So I went to the bathroom, came back, chatted with my wife for a little bit. We're like, oh, do we go for a walk? I was like, oh, she seems a bit upset. Maybe just see if she'll go back to sleep. She went back to sleep. So I was like, all right, I'll start my day, because, that's the kind of dad I want to be. You know why? The earlier I start my day, the earlier I get all my shit done, the earlier I finish, I can spend better quality time with her in the afternoon. Like all of that sort of stuff matters. Obviously, those are my personal circumstances, but that's the attitude that you want to have, especially towards things like training. Like I've already done my training session today as well. That's going to set me up for a much better day, because when you're stagnant, your energy is stagnant. When you're not moving, your energy is not moving, and you can get stuck. There's a reason why emotion is energy in motion, right? We want to move our bodies. That's going to create better quality emotions. That's going to create better quality, just better standards for our life. And even as Trav was saying, you're being a role model, right? Those are the those are the promises you make to yourself the night before, that you're like, in the next morning, you've got to have that conversation with yourself. And, it depends on how harsh you want to be, but it's like, am I going to be a little bitch? Am I going to bitch out? And am I going to not be the best version of myself for my kids? Am I going to be setting this as a role model? When I want to get them up for school, are they going to sleep in because they saw me sleep in, right? Is that the battle is that what I'm going to, am I going to reap that when I sow that? And then you think, all right, well, no, I'm not going to be that person. And whatever language works for you to get you out. And I've used that in the gym before when I've been in there and I haven't really been giving it my all. And there's a quote I love. I think Dr. Mike Israel says it a lot. It's like, I'm not here to not work hard, right? It's like, when you're doing something and you're going to commit to do something, commit to doing it and give it your all, and don't let anything affect you from doing it, because you're not there to not work hard. It's like, it's the same thing as this planet. I'm not on this planet to have a half-assed time. I'm here to get the most out of every area. And if I'm going to get the most out of every area, that's going to require me ignoring the distractions, just getting it done, and being okay with just getting it done, even if it means a little bit less sleep if I need to, because it's going to have much more dividends on the back end of that. If you got an extra 45 minutes a night of sleep, that sleep is good and it's important for you. But if 3 or 4 of those days you trade that 45 minutes for a gym session and you weren't going to ever do that gym session at another time, that's got far more benefit for you. So you have to have perspective, as we talked about at the start, in the context of my life. How important is this to me? And then when you can zoom out on it, again, the more you zoom out, the more you gain that perspective, the less those little things will matter, and the less the little irritances and the little hiccups in the day are going to be an issue for you, and the more resilient you'll be able to be, because you remember what the long term is, right? A hill can look like a speed bump when you really zoom out. And I think zooming out is the sort of the mental picture I want to give you. Just imagine zooming out on your life, and noticing that all of those little things, those little irritances, it's like, fuck, you're not going to remember that. Right? You're not going to remember that someone cut you off on the freeway on the way to work. You probably not even remember it in 3 weeks' time, let alone 3 years. So don't spend an entire day stewing on it and wasting that opportunity to be better, to grow into that better version of yourself, because it does take practice. It does take time. There are going to be times when you slip, times when you lose it a little bit. But again, it's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up, and just being constantly willing to get back up and to get better at it and better at it and better at it is what is going to create resilience. Don't expect to just go from, 0 to, I'm a stoic and nothing affects me. I am Zen, and, the outside world is nothing on my internal peace, because I need nothing. I want for nothing. I just, go for gold if you can do that quickly. But for most of us, it will take a little bit of time. So be willing to give it the time that it takes, just like a body transformation, right? The two are very similar in that regard.
Mate, I completely agree. I think one thing I think that people could deploy, and we did talk about gratitude previously, but in times of turbulence, we get so caught up in the trivial shit that actually doesn't matter, and we allow that to dictate our whole day, right? Like someone cutting you off in traffic, it's like, you won, and this is what I tell a lot of people as well, it's like, you don't know why they cut you off in traffic. Like maybe they were racing to the hospital because their son got hit by a car himself, and they were trying to get to them before they died. I was like, if then someone cut you off, would you have empathy for them, or would you have frustration and anger towards them? You'd probably have empathy. It's like, cut me off, dude, and cut me off 7 more times. Like, go and see your kid. Get there. You want me to drive in front of you and just start smashing cars out the way? Like, I'll help you get there. Like, let's get there, get to your son. But like, I think we rush to choose emotions when we don't have the full picture of the scenario as well. We default. There's a stimulus and a response, and we never expand the gap to choose a better quality emotion. And I think for us, to be emotionally resilient or have emotional stamina, it does require the ability to expand that gap. And I think that is one of the biggest things. There's a stimulus coming at me, whether it be if it's negative, and there is a default response. And that default response has been trained over years and years. And from how you saw your parents default to that response, and that's how we learned it. And it's like, well, you have to question everything. Is this response actually serving me? And a lot of the time it's not. I was like, okay, well, if this isn't serving me, this is one of the triggers I'm going to work on at the moment. So it's going, okay, well, if this is a negative response, or what's a positive response? Someone cuts me off in traffic. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, it is what it is. Like, it's okay. Like, did it ruin your day? No, you might have got to work 2 minutes later. That's also okay. Like, nothing happened. You were going to the same place, except you got there 2 minutes later. Is that a reason to completely ruin the next 30 minutes of your driving? No, it's not. Like, you're allowing these external circumstances to dictate your internal environment, and now you're carrying a negative emotion for the next 30 minutes when they probably didn't even know they cut you off. And that's the sad part. They're like, I didn't even know I did. I'm sorry.
What do you mean side mirrors? I don't have any of those. Most BMWs I've noticed don't actually have side mirrors. They just weave through.
Just go through.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned something there. It's like with having that sort of 30 minutes, I mean, for me mentally, I can't get pissed off on the road because then I'm like, I'm not going to drive like an asshole in response to this because I don't think that's what a lot of people do. Because I'm like, even if I don't have my wife and my daughter in the car, I've taken a call on people's silly billies on the road now that we've got the daughter in the car. So I don't, no F-wits or anything like that. But I'm like, what's the point in me driving and holding on to this anger? It's like, all that's going to do is make it more likely that I have an accident. And then, my daughter will be without a dad and I can't have that happen. Jesus Christ. No, I'm like, oh, that person must be in a hurry. I wonder where they're off to. I hope they're okay.
That's a fascinating way of driving.
Yeah, I didn't know they taught offensive driving and defensive driving. They must have been. They listened to the podcast about scoring more goals and they wanted to get there quicker. But what I noticed for a lot of people is when some external circumstances come in that affect the way that you operate in the day, it's often because of not taking complete ownership of yourself. Let's say, for example, someone cuts you off, you hit a red light, and then they speed through it, you don't, and then you're stuck at the red light, and then you think, fuck, I'm late, right? Because that's usually the biggest reason why people have issues in traffic. It's, I'm going to be late. And then it's like, if you were taking ownership of your own circumstances and taking ownership of everything that you could have done, then it's like, well, you know what? Really, I'm actually pissed off at myself because I didn't leave on time. I left right. It told me I had 29 minutes. I left with 30 minutes and I thought I'd make up the extra minute on the road. If that's the pattern that you're running, then you need to address that and you need to take ownership for what are the things that I could have done differently to change these circumstances, especially when it comes to communication with others, any interaction with the outside world. You've got to reflect. And Trav did say before, it's like, you can't control how people respond to you. But if you intend something positive and they respond in a negative way, then you can ask yourself, well, hey, how could I have communicated that better? How could I have communicated that in a way where my intended message would have gotten through? Like, if you tell your wife, oh, you look lovely today. And she responds, well, fuck you. Don't I look lovely every day? Why just today? All right. Only when I get my makeup done. All right. You didn't even notice that I got my, and then it becomes a thing. Like that might be the case that happens. So then it's like, maybe instead of saying, instead of blowing up at her, be like, can't believe you can never accept a compliment, and then it turns into an argument. It's then saying, how could I have phrased that better so that the intended message would have gotten through? And it's the same thing when it comes to life in general, is taking ownership for your own actions and your own behavior and saying, well, what did I do that caused this set of circumstances? You know what? If someone cut me off in traffic and I wasn't late, it wouldn't be an issue. I'd be like, whoa, all right, I'll back away. Like, all right, that person's got somewhere to be. I don't want to get in their way. Or even if they're just a young driver, he'll learn eventually, let them go off and do their thing. Okay, it doesn't affect you. Water off a duck's back. But if it affects you because it makes you late, because you didn't leave on time and one little hiccup, gets in your way of your day, then you've got to reflect and say, hang on, am I actually pissed at this person or am I pissed at myself because I didn't plan my day effectively? And this comes down to looking at, we talked about this last week, time and randomness, right? They're always going to happen. I was listening to a thing again. It's like time and randomness are undefeated, right? They're undefeated record, 100 knockouts, 0 losses. But so don't anticipate that there's not going to be any randomness in your day, because there's going to be. And if you plan for it and adjust for it, because you have I've got this meeting scheduled and I've got this thing done and I've got to wake up at exactly 4:15. And if I wake up at 4:16, it's too late, then I can't finish my workout. And then I get annoyed about it. All of these, and then it becomes a cascade and a flow on effect. So if you give yourself the time and the space to allow for randomness in your day and you don't jam pack every single minute of every single day, then that'll give you enough time, enough space, and enough peace to flow with it. But most people are just so busy doing and doing and doing, they never even have the space to enact an algorithm or a plan to get them back into a right headspace, because it's like, fuck, I've got to get to the next destination because it's all back to back to back to back. And then they get home as a stressed out, pissed off dad that, needs to take 5 minutes away when his wife's been with the kids all day or whatever the circumstances are. And she's like, well, I need you to take the kids so I can, go to the bathroom without someone knocking at the door and wanting to come in. All right. And then it creates a whole nother thing. So give yourself space in your day. You don't need to be a peak performer who's like every minute's blocked out and ready to go. It's like there's going to be random shit that happens. So if you allow for it, you're going to be a hell of a lot better at dealing with it than if you just say, oh, I'll deal with it if it comes up. Because guess what? It's always going to come up.
Dude, I completely agree. I think that's one of the big factors. It's going, okay, I'm always going to have randomness. I'm always going to have obstacles. It's having if, when, then scenarios as well. But I think it's like we have protocols that we're going to hit throughout the day. So again, we'll go back to these 3 protocols that we're looking at trying to hit. Maybe it's steps and training and nutrition, that you have to have a power of agency. No matter what happens, you have the power within yourself to go from plan A to plan B to C. There's like 26 letters in the alphabet. You just go to the next one. Oh, someone ate my food in the work lunch fridge. And it's like you can get frustrated and go buy yourself a Macca's double quarter pounder meal. Well, it's like, okay, well, if when Janice decided to eat my lunch like she does on Tuesdays, I'm just going to go down and grab a sumo salad. I'm going to get a Nando's chicken suprema wrap with extra tenderloins. I think you have these if, when, then scenarios. And there's like, well, it's your default. You don't even have to think about it. It doesn't even, it's like, all right, cool. Clearly Janice needed food more than me today. Okay, and that's why she ate my lunch. It's
like, put laxatives in it next time, and she'll
exactly. Learn. She'll learn that, Janice. But when you look at it, it's like it's having these if, when, then scenarios, which allows us to default to the next thing. I was like, okay, if my food was off, then I'll just do this. Okay, if I woke up late, then I'll just do that. So it's like it's always having a default scenario that still keeps you in line from plan A to plan B to plan C, and allows you to just keep moving through your day without any. The major obstacles become speed bumps, and they just slow us down momentarily, but we just push through them. When instead of like those obstacles becoming stop signs. And I think that's a big difference. It's like speed bumps or stop signs. Like one, we just keep breezing through. The other one, we're sitting there and we could be sitting there for hours as we watch traffic come past because we're just sitting with our emotions of frustration. So you have to have default, an algorithm to get you back on track, but also the default pathways to still keep you on track to hit your daily goals or to still win the day. And I think when we're looking at this, we have the plus ones, and we're looking at gamifying, right? We have like plus ones, and we talked about this last week. Like, okay, hit my steps, +1, hit my training, +1, hit my nutrition, +1. It's like, oh, I scored 3 points in a day. Well, the baseline is 0. And a lot of the time when we get hit with something outside our control, we don't not only hit a +1, we go into the negatives. Okay. So I couldn't get my training in because something happened and I didn't train this morning. So now I also didn't hit my nutrition, but also just sat in my office all day. And then I got Uber Eats, and then I had a block of chocolate and a pizza at nighttime. So you not only didn't go +1, you didn't even stay at 0. You went -3. So the difference between the lesser than best version of you and the best version of you is a 6. Okay, so there's a 6, there's a -3, or there's a +3. So you just not following through the protocol doesn't mean you're going to be at baseline and I'll just go sideways for the day. You can go into the negatives. So I think it's understanding that if I'm not going to default into the less than best version of me and make choices that give me like a 2 or 3 or 4 up to 6 point difference on my possible game on the daily basis to make sure I'm scoring and I'm winning. Okay, because you don't want to be beat with like 100 points advantage like on a game of footy, and it's like no one wants to watch that game, no one at all, because it's no fun to watch. They're getting humiliated, and so are you if you start eating like an absolute crazy person just because you didn't go to the gym this morning. I was like, okay, cool. If, then, when. Okay, just move to the next thing. So I think it's having the fundamentals, it's having the if, when, thens, it's having the chip algorithm in place, but it's also knowing the triggers that take you off course. It's understanding what you focus on matters, because we really drill that focus and we're focusing on shit that just doesn't matter. It's like, will it matter in 10 days? No? Then why? Like, why? Why are you even giving it 2 minutes? Like, is it going to matter in 10 months? No. Like, then who cares? Like, it's sometimes like, normally there's like a 10 minutes, or there's a 7 minutes, 7 days, 7 months, 7 years. And I was like, will this matter in 7 minutes? Yeah, it could do. If I'm still stuck in traffic and old mate cut me off. Well, will this matter in 7 days? No. Will it matter in 7 months? No. Will it matter in 7 years? I won't even remember it. Not even 7 days I'll remember this.
I hope not. Jesus.
So it's like when you're looking at it, we worry about stuff that doesn't matter. It's like when in reality is like there's the whole book, right? The Zero Art of Not Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. You know, we only have so many fucks to give in life, and we all give fucks about the wrong stuff, which then we don't have enough fucks to give about the right stuff. It's like, give a fuck about your health, right? Like that's what you should be giving a fuck about, not about, you know, getting cut off in traffic or someone eating your lunch. Like actually give a fuck about the stuff that is going to change the direction and trajectory of your life as a role model for your kids, right? I think that's such a big thing. So understanding that perspective matters. Is this going to matter in 7 days, 7 months, 7 years? No, then just leave it. Like leave it and just move on. It's okay. Take a breath. Also, we look at it, it's like, oh, it's the worst day ever. It's like, dude, you have a house with a TV and wireless internet and food, and you had water coming out of your tap, and you went to the toilet and flushed it. Like
you had enough water to sit under a stream of it for 20 minutes and make it extra hot.
What do you mean you're having a bad day? It's like there's people walking for like 2 hours to try and get water. Like they're barely surviving with food. It's like you didn't have a bad day. You had a bad moment. Okay? Stop making bad moments bad days. I think that's a big thing that people have to understand. And also, your worst day is someone else's best day. So have some perspective and have less entitlement. Okay? Like you are so fortunate to be listening to this on YouTube or on a podcast through internet. Like, dude, like be grateful. Have perspective. And so often it's like, oh, like if you actually started saying out loud the things that annoyed you, you'd sound like a whiny little bitch.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you went to like a third world country and started telling them, like, as I say, it's like, I play these scenarios out in my mind sometime. If I went to them and complained to them about the things I complain about, they'll be like looking at me going, seriously? Like that's your issue right now? Like I'm just for you.
Like your internet was a bit slow on your call. Oh no!
Oh my gosh! Like you're looking at yourself and then you go, "Yeah, I'm a bit of a dick. I need to actually stop complaining about stuff that really doesn't matter in life. My kids are healthy, and I have the ability to control my emotions, and I have security over my head, like roof, food. I can move. I'm just choosing not to move. Like I get to go to a gym and train." Right, you actually have a gym that you get to go to. Like these people don't have gyms; they have to walk the 2 hours to get water. Like that's their exercise.
Bucket on either side. It's like Mulan when they're walking with the things. That's their workout. That's what
exactly. They're not getting incidental steps in because they want to get their NEAT up. They're trying to walk for 2 hours to try and get water so they can survive. I was like, so it's like perspective matters, and I take it to the extremes always, just to make myself feel like ridiculous. Like and Liv laughs at me. I was like, to make it funny because I laugh at myself because then that shifts my state. Because if I'm annoyed, then I go to extremes. And I all of a sudden I just laugh at myself, and my whole state shifts because I'm like, you are ridiculous. And the moment that I can laugh at myself and say I'm ridiculous, I can't be angry. Like, because they don't coexist. Those emotions don't coexist together. And then I'm grateful because that perspective then gives me gratitude. And I'm grateful. I start to look at, okay, what else am I grateful for? And this is a good algorithm to embed when times of frustration. That I'm like, well, I'm grateful for this and that and all the rest. So I'm really just grateful that I get to be a role model for my kids. Like, you know, my dad passed away when I was 17. Like, he didn't get to be like an amazing role model. Like, I'm lucky at the moment. I am a role model. I can be a role model for my kids. Like, I'm so fortunate with so many things. Like, you know, I'm not entitled that, like, I don't have this entitlement around being a dad. Like, I'm grateful that I get to be a dad, and I will try and be the best version of me for my kids. Like, I knew Jackson was like, he loved running. I can't take him to the gym. So I just started running. Like, that's one of the biggest reasons I started running over the last year, because I wanted to spend more time with him over the next sort of 5 to 6 years doing something that he enjoys doing so we can bond together more. It's like, like this is where you make your choices to be the best version of you and be the role model. And then for me, I get to spend every Saturday with him. I get to pace him in our park runs, and I get to help him get better and run faster. And he finishes, he got a 24 minutes 30 for his 5K on Saturday, which is his fastest park run. And he's like 8 years old. And I was like running like 4 minute, like 34 paces or kilometers. And I was like, 4 minute 50
You'll be
kilometers.
lapping me.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you're 8 years old and you're like, but every week we've just done it for like nearly 6 months now. We just keep refining, keep running, and he just tucks in behind me and I pace him through the laps. But every week we get to bond together and I get to help him with skill acquisition and he loves it. He looks forward to it. We get to bond over fitness, which is a part of my life. And because of that, he starts wanting to be better at fitness. And these are ingrained core memories that is shaping his identity as a human being for the rest of his life. And that means fitness is going to be a part of his identity, because this is who I identifies as someone who runs, who enjoys it, who understands that the more I do something, the better I can get at it. And I think for us, it's understanding that you have such a power as a role model, as a dad, that if we can simply control, like manufacture this ideal week with understanding there'll be randomness involved in there, and knowing that if we do get punched in the face, how to course correct. And like you were saying before, I think ownership is one of the biggest things. Unless we own that we have all the control in the world out of every single choice that we make, right? Then that gives us the power back in our hand. Because people say they don't have control. It's like, oh, I can't leave my job. I can't. Like, I hate this work. They literally, people work in a job for years and years they hate. And it's like, I can't leave. It's like, why can't you leave? Oh, I won't be able to make money. Well, yes, you can. Well, it's also now it's a choice not to leave. It's not that you can't leave. You're choosing not to leave because you want to make that money. Okay. Can you do things in the short term on the side to increase your skill to then be hired by a competitor or someone else? Yes, you can. Are you doing that? No, I'm not. So now you're choosing not to do that. Like we're never stuck. We're never stuck in anything in life. We're never stuck in a marriage. We're never stuck with our health. We're never stuck with our job. We have the power to choose any possible decision at any given time, right? And stop thinking you're pigeonholed into anything, because you have ownership over your life. You have one life, not two. So make sure you spend the hours in your day correctly to make the most out of your life, to be the leader of your family and the leader of your children so they can be the best versions of them. Because if you come home and you're annoyed with your work all the time, and they pick up off it and like, oh, is this what work is? We just hate our job and we have to keep showing up and there's no other way. Is that what you're teaching your kids? And is that what you want to teach your kids? Or you're teaching your kids that I don't have time for health and fitness because I work so much. So now they're thinking, okay, if I work, then I don't do health and fitness because that's what I've learned from my parents. It's an either or, not a both scenario. So be so mindful. The decisions you make, our kids don't listen to what we say, they listen to what we do. So I think your choices and having ownership over this have a much larger impact than we give them credit for.
Yeah, 100%. They're sponges. They just look at what you do, and regardless of what justifications you use and what reasoning, they're just going to say, Dad said and Dad did not go to the gym. Dad ended up getting overweight. He was stressed because he worked really hard. So therefore, if I work hard, I'm not going to have time for this stuff either. And they're not going to question it. Then you think that as kids grow up, they're going to grow into it. They're not going to question it. This is where we get a lot of our stuff from. There's a story that I love about a couple who were cooking a turkey for Thanksgiving. It was an American story, right? And what the wife did was she chopped off the tail, like end of it, and then the top end of it, like basically like a quarter of it on either end. And the husband was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "No, this is just how you. This is what do you mean?" He's like, "Why have you cut off like most of the turkey on the front and the end?" He's like, "Well." She's like, "Well, that's what my mum always did." And then he was like, well, why? And, you know, they had the family around. So, you know, her mum was there. And he's like, well, why did you always do that? It's like, well, that's what my mother always did. And they're like, and grandma wasn't with them. So they were like, all right, well, let's give her a call and ask her, because this is really starting to piss me off, right? You know, when you just want to get to the bottom of something. And then, you know, it calls the grandma. And they're like, how come when we were preparing the Thanksgiving turkey, why do you always chop the top off and the bottom off? And she was like, because our ovens weren't big enough to fit a whole turkey. Don't tell me you guys are still doing that shit, right? And that's what we do, but we don't even know. We enact the patterns of our parents because they're our first sort of trusted figure, and you're going to be your kid's first trusted figure in life. They're going to look to you that, like, you know, for 6 months, at least, the baby doesn't even know that it's separate from the mum, right? And the dad, if they're seeing you every single day, they're going to know, oh, this is, you know, these are my parents. These are who they are to me. They know what's best. And if you show them a way of living, that means that you can't do two things, right? You can't do health and fitness if you work really hard, right? As opposed to being honest with yourself and saying, you know, I'm choosing not to do this because I'm prioritizing something else, right? We've talked about this before. It's never about being too busy or not having enough time. It's always about priorities. So what is actually important to you in your life, and live in alignment with that. Stop lying to yourself about what you think is important to you. Stop saying, oh, I'm going to do this health and fitness thing, and I'm going to say it because it makes me feel good to say it. It's like, either it's actually fucking important to you or it's not. And if it's not, own that, right? What's important to me? You know, I really enjoy having beers with my friends and, you know, and eating takeaway with my wife, and I don't care how I look, right? First of all, I would call a little bit of bullshit on that, because, you know, there's always that little bit of, you know, in terms of how you look, how you feel, more so than anything else. But if you're the honest to God, happy with yourself, and you want to enjoy that, be my guest. But be honest with yourself about it. Be honest with yourself in every area of life. I'm choosing not to do these things, right? It's not about I can't afford this, is I'm choosing to buy other things. I was chatting to a client the other day who was like, I can't afford you know, I don't have the money for a gym membership at the moment. But they was also telling me about how they wanted to go out to lunches and dinners once a week. I was like, if you stop doing that, like once or twice a week, it's like, well, if you stop doing that once a week, you could afford a gym membership, right? But for that person, it was about priorities. It was about, they wanted to be able to go out and socialize and do that. I'm like, oh, well, then that's fine. But don't expect to get as quick a results as you could. And don't complain that you're not getting the results that you think you should be getting, because you haven't prioritized effectively. So put your priorities in your calendar and assign them, and say, I'm doing this because it is important to me, or I'm not doing it because it's not important to me. And then that's okay. And then you're at least instilling in your kids the ability to have the choice, as opposed to, I can't because that's the way the world is, you know. And don't impart your bullshit and your belief systems, right? We had people, it's so funny. We posted in our, we've got a free Facebook group, the Fit Dads Transformation Group, where we've got about 1,000 dads that share resources and help each other out along the journey as a bit of a community. And we posted some before and afters in there. And there was a couple of people who were like, oh, yeah, it's photoshopped, because a guy, he has a very distinct like chest tattoo. And in one photo, someone was taking it of him, and in another, he was taking it in the mirror. So the chest tattoo was reflected on the other side. So in one photo, it looked like it was on his left chest, and on one photo, it looked like it was on his right. I was like, if you are that, and it wasn't even like the craziest transformation in the world. It was a really decent transformation, but it wasn't like he went from like 160 kilos to 77 kilos. Like it was a good fat loss, but it was like, mate, if you are that deep down the rabbit hole that you think that requires Photoshop and editing for someone to have a transformation like that, and it's just not possible for you, it's like, fuck, please don't pass that down to your kids, right? Don't pass down your limiting bullshit onto your kids, saying that they can't have everything that they want, that they can't achieve the body of their dreams, that it's like, oh, as soon as you have kids, you let yourself go. It's like, well, you know, we're two examples, and we have multiple clients that have many, many more examples that is just simply not the case. So you've got to let go of your limiting bullshit so that your kids can have the best opportunity. And if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for them.
Mate, I think all you have to do is look at the comments on some of our Facebook ads as well, right? So there's some of the photos.
What did they say? You had water weight? You weren't fit or something?
Exactly. Water weight, it's not fit. No, but it's more so it's like, yeah, he can be fit, but I bet you he's a shit dad. I'm like,
oh, why is that? One. Jesus.
Yeah, like, dude, like they go full on, right? I bet you, I'm like, right. Well, why am I your dad? Clearly, you spend 2 hours a day at the gym, and you care more about yourself than your kids. I was like, just so you care about yourself, again, I definitely don't spend 2 hours a day at the gym. I train like strength train like 3 times a week.
Your workouts are like fucking 20 minutes,
literally,
all this volume, just fucking get it done.
Just get it done, right? Like I just get in there, get it done. I do a lot in a day. I don't have time to spend 2 hours in the gym. I would love to, but I don't have time. It's actually very relaxing. But it's like you're pushing out. It's like, I can't look like you, so what you're doing mustn't be okay. Like, because their limiting beliefs are so like strong, they've made their statements are convictions. They believe it because now they've put this threshold, this glass ceiling on themselves, and then they've justified to themselves that I can't be like that. And like, there's so many comments like that all the time. And it's like, guys, like you can find 45 minutes 3 times a week. You can go for a walk at lunchtime for 15 minutes. It's just a choice. And and that's it. At the end of the day, it's just choices. It's like, the guy, like you just said then, with the guys like, no, I can't afford the gym. And you're like, well, you can't afford it. You have to cut out this. It's like, well, no, you're choosing to eat out instead of going to the gym. So you're choosing to train at home. Like, reframe it. I'm choosing to train at home. Okay. Because I want to go. That's completely fine then. And it's like, no, I can only have I don't have enough time. It's like, I'm choosing to make my health and fitness not a priority. Okay. You need to reframe your statements to fully understand them, because I don't, like, a lot of the time, like, we don't even think about what we say, and we're just like blatantly creating justifications and excuses rather than fully controlling the meaning behind the word. It's like, no, I'm choosing to not make my health and fitness a priority. I'm choosing to be overweight. And that is okay if that is your choice. But you need to own that choice. And it's like, I'm not choosing to be overweight. Well, you are, because you have a set of actions that is giving you a outcome. And you are choosing these actions over and over again for years. Ergo, you are choosing to be overweight. You have chosen to have less energy. You have chosen to have poor sleep. You have chosen to not be able to run 5 kilometers with your kids. You have chosen to, these are choices, choice. And these outcome-based choices, well, because these initial choices that you've just held on to over time. Now, the great thing is you can choose to change. But that is also a choice. But you have to draw a line in the sand. The version who I was, with the actions that I was taking me towards a direction I did not longer serve me. So I am now making new choices, the new version of me. I've divorced my old self and I have married my new self. Those old actions don't serve the future version of me anymore. And you have to have, like, write a bloody marriage certificate, sign that, like, marry your new self, like, or divorce your old self, because that was a toxic relationship. Like, it was. You had a toxic relationship with the one person in the world that you can never get away from. You, like, you're stuck with you forever. Okay. So, like, that's the thing. So it's like, you have to, like, literally divorce that version of you. The one that, like, deals with stress with drinks and alcohol and Netflix and food just so they can blunt your emotions and get through the week or the day or the weekend. It's like, no, that version is not the best version of you. Like, you were put on this earth for more than getting smashed on the weekends. Like, like, your kids also need someone that they can look up to and be their role model. Like, you were put on this earth, whether it be for, like, just being the best dad out there, then you have to define to yourself and being self-aware, like, what does the best dad do? What does the best dad for my kids do? Okay, this is what it does. This is how he acts. This is what he does. This is the time he has for the kids. This is when we're with the kids. This is how he is present. Like, if we actually define things and spend some time to define them, then we just have to live in accordance with that. But everything is a choice. Stop acting like it isn't a choice. Because that's all it is. It's just a series of choices over time. That's all I wanted to really talk about today, man. What about yourself?
I feel like we've said We said everything and more. If this is something that you're wanting to work on and get a better handle on, right? Like there's a lot of fitness coaches out there that, and I've noticed this, right? The longer I've been in it, the more I've been seeing people be like, oh, yep, custom training, specific macronutrient breakdowns for your body type, and all of the different, all the tactical stuff. And it's like that's all well and good for a lot of people, but I think what sets what we're trying to do here apart is like it's also a mental game, and there's only so much you can tell people. Like, well, be grateful and just do it. And it's like, well, there's a lot of obviously conflicting circumstances that go on, and there's all these other things that can happen and go on. And it's like, you've got to be aware of what your limitations are. You've got to be aware of what your limiting beliefs are. You've got to be aware of the shit that's going on for you mentally, the trade-offs, the priorities, what's going on for you. And you've got to be willing to be okay with dealing with some of that stuff in order to get the result that you want. And that's what we're trying to do here, is to help people with that. So if you're interested in, getting on board with some coaches that are actually doing that kind of stuff and can help you with the mental side as well as the physical, obviously we can do that. Head to fit-dad.club. If you enjoyed the podcast, leave it give it a like on YouTube, subscribe if you want to see more of these. We post some little shorts as well. Leave it a rating and a review on Apple and on iTunes and Spotify and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, stick around because if you have any other comments as well, any other topics that you're like, I'd really love it if you guys could address this, then let us know, because we're always happy to do that sort of stuff and serve the community.
Yeah, mate. And I think that was a very good point that you just made there at the end. It's like when you're looking for a coach and, you get given a set of macros or a training plan and you're not following it, and they're just telling you, well, you don't want it bad enough then, clearly. Like, that's not a good response. Yeah. Or just do it better. Like, that's also not a good response, because there is constraints inside your life, emotional constraints and actual time constraints. So you need to have someone that can break down what's currently holding you back and literally break you down as a person to help build you up to the version 2.0 version of you, to be the role model for your family and your kids. And that's why we specifically work with dads, because we understand the constraints, but we love the carry-on effect from transforming a dad's life. And then because of that, transforming his whole family, because the flow-on effect of him getting more energy, getting healthier, getting fitter, feeling more confident, feeling unstoppable. Like, an unstoppable dad can completely change his initial close family unit, but also all the people around him as well. And so if you want that, if you want to become that sort of unstoppable dad who feels bulletproof and also looks bulletproof, go to that fit-dad.club and book in for a call, and we can have a chat and sort of see how we can get you from point A to point B and what's currently holding you back and how to overcome that. But other than that, guys, like Jay said before, subscribe, rate, review, only positive ones. And let us know if you want anything specific.
If it's negative ones, save it for the Facebook ads.
Exactly. All right, guys. Peace out. See ya.